the 1 meter resolution is truly the world game changer for structural geology, for landslides, for land use, for karst, cave.
This is
studies.
incredible. Welcome to Planet Geo, the podcast where we talk about our amazing planet, how it works, and why it matters. Oh, there we go. There we go.
Got it.
Radio Chris is here. Excellent.
Yes, he's ready to go.
Chris, that was a fun interview.
Yes,
Phillip
it was.
Prince. That's a high quality geologist right there. That is really okay. Here's how I feel. I feel like really interesting geologist. I think you and I would have a fun time hanging out with him, going looking at some rocks. We have definitely very different interests, I think, but some overlap for sure, right? Like different specialty.
Okay, now this is your take, right?
Well, yeah, that's my take.
I kind of like geomorphology, so
okay, fair enough.
You're a lab rat, you know. No, you're. I guess one of the takeaways for me is he has a unique ability to see things in the field, and then to talk about those things at a level that almost anyone can understand. And
really,
you get that
great
feel.
Educator.
Yeah, you get that feel when you watch his YouTube videos, when you talk to him, like we did. You know, it's just it's. I think that's a unique thing, is to be able to see the world that way.
I agree,
and just make sense of it at a different level.
I think you're exactly right. It's that he has a really finely tuned. We talked about like how a geologist thinks in previous episodes. He's like the type example for that. Like this is the very highly tuned person who has a very highly tuned geological intuition and geological understanding. And his stories about LiDAR, that is cool. And he talked us through the LiDAR map database, basically, which you could look at, and it's amazing. I mean, it's really, really gives you a unique insight into the world, in the place where you live. You go look this up. It's really, really cool.
It is. It absolutely is.
You could go to his YouTube channel, GeoModels, at the GeoModels, which is really excellent. I mean, I learn a lot from him on YouTube, and it's an interesting, as you said, combination. He can start from zero and go really, really deep, and that's a unique skill set.
It doesn't feel deep though, Jesse. That's the thing. Is when it's all said and done, you look back and you're like, wow, you know, I really learned a lot. It doesn't feel that way though. It's
I agree
definitely
with you.
Not skin level. It's deeper than that, you know, but it just doesn't feel that way. And that's an art in and of itself, actually.
I think that's right. I think you're exactly right on that one. So this is Dr. Phillip Prince. He's got his PhD as a really geomorphologist, tectonicist from Virginia Tech. Now works in several different consulting aspects, works a lot on landslide evolution using LiDAR, has an amazing YouTube channel, as we said before, that GeoModels, that talks a lot about Appalachian tectonics. Really cool, the history or the geological history of the Cumberland Gap. Like there's an episode on that. It's really cool stories about Appalachian geology and some other things. So check that out there. You can find him on several different avenues, but Dr. Phillip Prince. So I don't know, Chris, what do you say? Should we just get to it here now?
We should, but I have one more other question before we do. Did you happen to see his Twitter or X handle?
I did not. No. What is it?
At all Phil's fault.
That's pretty good. I like
good.
that. Okay, that's a good one. That's a good one. I did not look that up. That's a good one. At Phil, all Phil's fault. That's great. All right, Phil Prince coming at you.
Let's do it.
Dr. Phillip Prince, welcome to Planet Geo. GeoModels. Welcome to Planet Geo. I'm super excited to talk to you. This is going to be awesome.
Glad to be here under both names, which should probably be one and the same name, but we'll get there.
Well,
we'll get there.
Yeah, you got to work on your unifying your branding at some point. But
they tell me that.
GeoModels at GeoModels on YouTube, right? Or GeoModels, yeah, with an S, yeah. And then Dr. Phillip Prince. I'm really excited to talk to you. Your channel has taught me a lot about Appalachian geology. Just like I moved to Pennsylvania, not really ever worked in the Appalachians, and so I've learned a lot from your channel. So I'm excited to talk to you about this. So
yeah, me too. It's good to finally see in person rather than watching on YouTube all the time.
That's right.
So,
I'm in a similar sized window. Maybe it's a little bit bigger here.
It's reminiscent. You just bring up some paint drawings and then we're good to go, right?
Yeah, that's right. Well, hey, we'll get into that, Jess.
You tell me, as I say, you tell me what you need to see, and we'll make it happen.
Yeah, all right.
Great.
Phillip, I'm going to go ahead and lead out with the question that we always ask. First of all, thanks so much for being with us today. I really look forward to talking to you about what you do. It's really interesting. So do you have an aha moment about what got you into geoscience in the first place?
Yeah. So I grew up, doing outdoor things, particularly actually like trout fishing. So being in steep creeks, sort of in the Blue Ridge, particularly on the Blue Ridge Escarpment, which ended up being the main focus of my PhD at Virginia Tech. I was around those spaces and never really thought about them in terms of why they look like they did. That was not. I'm from upstate South Carolina. Went to public school here. Great public schools, but earth science was really not a part of it. And it wasn't, in fact, till I got to undergraduate. I went to Furman University here in Greenville, South Carolina, my hometown. And actually, the fall term of my freshman year, first suite of classes I took in college, had a general education requirement and said, I'll take EES. It was Earth and Environmental Science. That was the geology department. And the first field trip, I think, which was in the first couple of weeks of classes, was to Jones Gap State Park and surroundings here in South Carolina. And one of those places I had spent quite a lot of time, and just hearing about it in terms of why it looked like it did. What are these different materials? Why is the land laid out like this? Having maps incorporated with that was kind of the aha moment. I mean, it was just seeing a place I had been much of my life, and I knew very closely in one way, and it was like you can get to know it in in another way, and that was it, man. I mean, that was definitely the aha moment for sure.
That's awesome. Can you paint a picture of what? I've never been to that state park before. What did you see when you went there?
So
what was different for you?
Yeah, it's on the Blue Ridge Escarpment. So here in southern Appalachia, you've got a 400 or 500 meter to kilometer in places. So 1,500 feet to about 3,500 feet step up in the landscape from what we call the Piedmont, which slopes out to the Atlantic, up onto this highland plateau that is the Blue Ridge, where the highest peaks in the Appalachians are located. This step up in the land, which you call the escarpment, where I'm from, you see it off in the distance. They call it the Blue Wall. I mean, it just looks like a line of mountains, but it's a plateau edge. And due to stream capture processes, it has gorges cut in it, where rivers that used to flow on the plateau surface were captured by Atlantic rivers and pulled off of that Gulf of Mexico draining upland down through these canyons, and they carve their canyons ever larger. Those canyons are full of waterfalls. They have steep bedrock streams. There's a lot of boulder accumulation from slope movements as well. But essentially, it's sort of a land of waterfalls, I guess. When you walk up through Jones Gap, it used to be a road from the lower elevation Piedmont up to the top of the plateau. You could follow the stream up. So you're walled in by high elevations. There's actual free falling waterfalls that are a couple hundred feet high. So it's a topographically dynamic landscape, and it's very sudden. Like within like 15 or 20 minutes from there, you're kind of in rolling farmland, and then all of a sudden you're in a place that, I mean, it's almost small scale Yosemite like features, huge exfoliation cliffs and things like that. So it's
It sounds like
it's an
a field trip.
engaging landscape, right? Like it's an
Yeah.
interesting place to be. And I think being introduced to thoughts on why it looked like, because I always thought it was a nice place, but I didn't even really
Yeah.
know that you could ask about the processes that made it look that way.
So this sounds like a field trip we got to go on, Chris, and have Phillip guide us around.
It's a good one.
Because
you have to have reservations to go. It's a state park. When I was a kid, you could go and you'd be the only car in the parking lot. You literally have to have a reservation. And that's a testament to what a cool place it is. Like,
do you have to have a reservation just to get in now too, or just to stay?
Just to enter and park.
To enter.
Wow.
Okay.
Spectacular. So, what were you chasing trout on the fly rod or with spinners or what?
No, I'm a spin fisherman, almost in like a resistance kind of way. Yeah, I'm a spin fisherman with repurposed panfish jigs. Like, yeah, I get these little soft plastic Hellgrammites and things like that from Walmart. A lot of times in these streams, just go in with a coil of line and tie it on a stick, kind of like a tinkara kind of thing.
Because you're just dumping it into plunge pools and stuff like that.
No room to cast. You're reaching over a rock. But it's, speaking to the reality of that landscape, it has these huge waterfalls. Above the waterfalls, there's stream reaches that they still think they're on the plateau flow into the Gulf. So they're lower gradient. And they have these trout populations that are cut off from the rest of the world by like this vertical 200-foot waterfall. So
cool.
It's really cool. Like you climb up a crazy steep trail, and you just kind of head off through the rhododendron. And a lot of times, some of them have a little bit of bogginess in their headwaters, so you get like a little bit of tannin in the water. Sometimes the brook trout are very dark in them.
Very cool.
Yeah, it's
okay.
it's
It's a good place. I got to come down there, chase some trout, look at geology.
You can think about Nick points. Yeah, it's good.
Yeah, think about Nick points. So that kind of leads me into my next question, which I want to hear the rest of the story, like between undergrad inspiration there till now. But I want to know what would you define yourself? What ology are you? I mean, I would kind of say you're like a geomorphologist, tectonic geomorphologist, maybe. Like what? But you do a lot of structure stuff, jack of all trades. Like what would you class yourself, and how did you go from undergrad to that specialty?
Tectonic geomorphologist is probably as close as you'll get. So I finished my PhD at Tech with Jim Spatilla, and that is, I think, certainly how he would describe himself. And I think a lot of as tends to happen, with an advisor, I think a lot of the way I see things today were a product initially of the classes I took with him, and then the work I did with him.
And was that preset? I mean, because you're describing your sort of upbringing and realization that like, oh, this is why this escarpment's here. It's almost like you're predefined to
it found me. It found me. Yeah. I did not go looking for it, and I will narrate the story in hopefully a timely manner.
Like there was no way you were going to be an igneous petrologist.
Well,
there's no way.
Believe it or not. That's where we're going with the story.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So I finished up at Furman, and I had gotten involved in not an igneous petrology, but a metamorphic petrology undergrad project that was actually looking at in the Escarpment area, some of these really unusual plant communities that were growing on what were mapped as amphibolite bedrock, or kind of calcsilicate, but they produce a chemically unusual soil, and they made these really incredible forest communities. So if you like being out on the land, you walk up into one of these, and it's like, oh, where am I? So
this is different.
Yeah, it was very different, and I thought that was quite interesting. So I finished up at Furman, worked in environmental consulting for a couple of years, wasn't really thinking about going to graduate school, just because I had sort of kept the hammer down academically all through my childhood, and I was kind of, stepped back for a while. Worked a couple of years. I thru hiked the Appalachian Trail in 2006. Did kind of a quick one right before going to Virginia Tech. but I was going to Virginia Tech to actually keep going with this like metamorphic petrology and kind of plant community kind of a thing. Got there, and when it came down to just basically sitting with a microprobe and then doing a bunch of petrography, it just wasn't at that point.
In other words, doing what Jesse does every day.
Oh, that's right.
Didn't do it for you, did it?
Petrography again. Yeah.
None taken.
It was probably the reason I include AT through hike, all that, is that I had gone in a different direction basically in the couple of years since I finished undergrad, and sort of a concern like, can you switch advisors? Is that like, and I was taking some classes with Jim Spatilla that were from that more big picture, kind of large scale material movement idea, like looking at a moving system like I would draw for you in paint, I guess. And I liked that. And there was actually, like the stream capture idea had come up on a field trip at Furman, and we were out on a trip near Virginia Tech. And I was like, man, this looks like this stream capture back home. And, I was talking to him about that. I thought it was pretty cool. And eventually I just ended up being like, look, like it's not, I had a fellowship through the College of Science. So I wasn't, TA issues were not so much of a thing with me. I did TA, but it was not, out of necessity. And I was able to switch to Jim being a primary advisor with the late Bob Tracy, who was the igneous and metamorphic petrologist at Tech, and sort of a co-advisor. And he still contributed significantly to what I did. But I think, I'm very much a generalist, and that's probably because I spent a lot of time with amphibole geochemistry and then went in the stream capture tectonic geomorph direction. But all that to say, when I ended up working with Jim, they had been interested in the Blue Ridge Escarpment. And I was kind of like, man, I used to look at that thing every morning on the way to high school, and I've caught a bunch of trout on it. So, So
there you go.
So I was in a position to kind of think about the layout of the landscape there, think about my own experiences, and it translated pretty well into publishable work. So
Phillip, what was the plan what did you want to do with that then? Did you want to, go into this kind of morphology and then teach, or go to teach at the college level, or because that's not what you do now.
It's not what I do
we'll
now.
Get into that a little bit.
No, I think that was initially the plan. I was at Tech for about 5 years after I finished. As kind of the soft money instructor or whatever you want to call it, because I really did enjoy teaching and had a lot of success with it. I probably am drawn more to the more applied side of things than I am to the purely research side of things. I enjoy participating in and contributing to research efforts, but as my sole sort of as the main focus of my job, it's just not the best match for me. I did not know that at the time I was applying for positions. I presume maybe that was something that folks sensed. But I am by no means away from the academic sector and haven't been since I left Tech. But the initial goal would have been, I think my vision was to be teaching at a smaller school, at a more teaching focused institution. Yeah.
Well, your channel, it's always, you can reach a lot of people and reach very deeply with these forums that you're making use of, like YouTube, and your passion for teaching comes across like immediately.
Well, I'm natural, and I genuinely appreciate that, and I think what you just said. You can reach a lot of people with it. I think that has become known to me, and I'm trying to do what I can with it. It was kind of a difficult time when I was pursuing academic positions and not having success with it. But much like me ending up in a place where there just happened to be this Blue Ridge Escarpment project that people wanted done, but it was just kind of sitting there, and suddenly a Blue Ridge Escarpment guy had to change advisors. Oh, there you go. It was, I guess it was sort of like it was meant to be, I guess, because the work I do now, um, outside of YouTube, I mean, the actual professional stuff I do now, it's a better fit for my personality.
What is that? You said offline that your day job is not YouTube, the YouTube channel, but are you consulting mostly? Are you working independently or with a group, or
a little of both? So you would say that roughly half the time is done with landslide work in Western North Carolina, and that's with Appalachian Landslide Consultants, which is it's a small group. We don't even have a physical office. You would say we're roughly based out of Asheville. Some folks started it a number of years ago when a landslide mapping program in North Carolina was canceled. It was defunded. And Jennifer Bauer and Stephen Fimler, folks that were working on that, started Appalachian Landslide Consultants to try to keep that work going. So I've worked with them since the end of 2019, and I still do mapping in Virginia. I do bedrock mapping in the Valley and Ridge, and that's as an adjunct at Tech. I'm paid through Tech, but it's for the state survey. Basically, I'm a state employee in that.
Is the state survey based in Virginia Tech, or based kind of has their home office on Virginia
No,
Tech
interestingly enough, it's in Charlottesville. It's at UVA, or it's close to UVA. It's not even at UVA. They have a number of offices throughout the state. They have a number of them down towards the coal producing part of the state. But I did work in an office in Charlottesville with them for a couple of years after Tech. But I'm basically 50-50 between landslides and Valley and Ridge structure. And on top of that, I still have various academic engagements when folks ask for a bit of participation. A lot of that is geomorph. A lot of that is actually still kind of fluvial, large scale fluvial geomorph kind of stuff. So it's all over the place, kind of in consistent with the difficulty of calling me a particular ologist.
Yeah. But hey, that's the fun of it, right? Is to have your fingers in a whole bunch of different stuff.
It is,
like
it
keeps it interesting, keeps you broad, keeps you diverse, and not being super niche has its value.
It does, and it works. It works better. It works better for me. It does.
So, Phillip, what does your day-to-day look like then? Like, are you in the field most of the time, or what's this?
Yeah,
what's this look like?
Pick a day, I guess. It's a split. There's a lot of remote sensing, so there's a tremendous amount of just LiDAR review, looking for past landslides. So trying to understand landslide behavior from looking into the past.
Can you back up a second, Phillip, and talk about what that is?
Chris is perking up here a minute.
Yeah.
I just want to. I want you to kind of paint a picture for our listeners about what is LiDAR, how's it work,
sure,
and how do you apply this?
Yeah, so LiDAR is an acronym, light detection and ranging. It's a way of imaging the Earth's surface and essentially seeing through the trees. So an aircraft flies over, shoots laser light down on the land surface. There's receivers, and you can process the stuff that bounces back to the plane and tell what it's bouncing off of. So you can tease out the bare ground surface. So it's in the Appalachians, where much of the land is forested. It's a really unique way to look at the land, because you can actually see the bare grain of the ground surface without trees in the way. If you're looking for rock outcrops, if you're looking for subtle expression of rock under the surface at the land surface, almost like seeing ribs through somebody's shirt or something like that. You can
that's a really good analogy.
Yeah, you can do that with LiDAR
like
in a way that is incredible. I mean, you can literally see, you can see geologic folding that's expressed at the ground surface, but in LiDAR, it really does look like bones or muscles silhouetted through a shirt or something like that, you know. So you can also,
and it's all in grayscale, right?
It for me it is. Now there's a variety of ways to process the imagery. I prefer the grayscale, and you can do it as if what we call a hill shade, as if the sun is casting a shadow from one point over the land. It's typically with the sun in the northwest as convention, which of course doesn't happen with us in the northern hemisphere, but nobody seems to worry about that. And like if you looked at LiDAR with the sun coming from somewhere else, you'd be like, it's broken. I don't know. You can do a style that we call slope shade, which is basically it's making flat areas bright and making steep areas dark. So the effect of slope shade is almost like a bright light is straight above the land. The issue with using what we call the hill shade, like with the sun in one place, is there can be a bright side of the hill that is really overexposed and you can't see anything on it. So I use both of these, and I look for patterns. Basically, I look to see the silhouette through the shirt. I look for pockmarks from old landslides. I determine where I'm going to go to evaluate things on the ground. And then the other part of the time is actually going to see what the reality of what I see in LiDAR is.
How often, so two questions on that then. First of all, how sensitive is it detecting actually the soil surface, or does it get dissipated by soil and really reflect like something subsurface, is question number one, I guess.
Yeah, so I am not the processor, but as far as I can tell, you're basically getting it. It's not penetrating.
Okay,
it's a light reflection, right?
Okay.
So much like the things you see on the surface, you're seeing them because they're reflecting light to you. It's kind of that.
Yeah, so you can see all that. I mean, I've seen your videos where you have, a boulder that's, fallen off, and you can identify in LiDAR where it came from the cliff face.
Yep, and you can, these are in big a lot boulders, of cases, you can see the little divots it made rolling down the hill. Yeah.
Yeah, it was amazing stuff. But then
it's crazy.
How often do you ground truth? When you ground truth it, are you finding your
Hold on, Jesse, what do you mean when you say that? What do you mean?
If you're looking at some LiDAR image, then you go to the field, you have some hypothesis in your head, and then you go to the field. How often are you wrong?
That's a really good question.
And I don't mean this to be you, but how often is LiDAR misleading? Maybe is a better way to phrase it.
Not that often, and particularly at this point, just because I have worked daily with LiDAR for, 9 years or something at this point. It has literally been a daily tool, whether I'm in the field or not. It's something I look at every day. There are features that you do misinterpret occasionally. There's details of the land, like is this soil derived from just the weathering of bedrock in place, or is this a transported soil? Is this soil that is material that's fallen off the hill slope and piled up here? Details like that can be very significant to work you're doing. It can be very significant to a user. If you're going to make a cut slope to build a house, you don't want to make a big old cut in a transported soil. It's going to be less stable. So things like that. Frequently, you can interpret that from LiDAR, but that's the kind of thing that you do need to ground truth, and sometimes you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised there.
What about? I've seen some of your videos where you were talking about how one part of the Shenandoah, I think, where it has these really regular
the
meander pattern. Yeah, these really regular meander pattern. And you were talking, if I remember correctly, this was a structural thing. These was a jointing surface in the rock. But how often do you confuse, again, just by looking at LiDAR, structural patterns versus like sedimentological, especially here in the Ridge and Valley, like sedimentological layering differences? And is that easy to tease apart? Because then there's like Google Earth imagery. Even I don't know if it's LiDAR, but some DEM thing where you can actually see the shaly parts have little layers in the shales that are clearly just slightly more resistant layers within a single unit.
Yeah.
And then, less
No,
resistant, et
it's
cetera?
you would pull it apart by really with sort of like the pictures I try to draw in YouTube videos where it's the strike of the bedrock layering is going to be a product there of the fold structures. So you're looking at structural architecture at the scale of miles. Basically, you're looking at thrust sheet scale, and you can tell from context, typically because a ridge is framing it up, or a sudden change in topography. If you were looking at say a carbonate unit is thrust onto shale, so the carbonate like limestone or dolomite, it has certain landscape producing properties that are very different from what a shale would have, and you would see the boundary between them running through the landscape, and that would tell you how the layering is running.
Okay,
And then if
gotcha.
you see linear features cutting across that, those are going to be, joints or fractures. Yeah.
They'd
So
have to be structural. Okay.
it's
Yeah.
it's being able to see, again, the reason I like to draw the block diagrams is that's sort of how we it's sort of how we think of it. Like you have to think of it from a cross sectional standpoint, and what would it look like if I took this element in the cross section, took it up to the surface, and then ran it out over the surface.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep.
I mean, it's a really cool thing. This realization came to me when I was in graduate school. We were doing a lot of secondary electron microscopy work on complicated zircons, and the person, Des Moser, the professor I was doing it with, was really just treating it like really simple cross-cutting relationships. It was geology 101 type stuff. And watching your LiDAR descriptions and your little block diagrams, it's reminiscent of that. It's like these are the same relatively straightforward principles we apply in the intro level class all the time, just using a different data set effectively to do that with, which is really cool. I just like that. I mean, I think it's
It's
really fun to think that way.
you're looking at the consequences of movements and interactions, and you're trying to pull together a narrative out of that. So in a place like the Valley and Ridge, you can see the elements that are a product of the contraction and folding, and then you can see elements that are not associated with that in terms of the stacked layers, but could still be involved with it, but they cut across those fold structures. It gets really tough out in the Piedmont now, in the metamorphic Piedmont, where it's just everything's a rolling hill, and the soil might be 30 feet deep. Yeah, that could be kind of a different story. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh,
Philip,
that's great.
if you were going to teach let's say a geomorphology class, how often would you want to use LiDAR to teach
Ooh,
the principles in
Ooh,
geomorph?
good question.
frequently.
Yeah.
Day one. Day one.
I bet.
Yeah.
I was struck by that. I was watching one of your more recent ones. I think it was on dune formation, and you made a comment. You were using LiDAR. You made a comment about how looking at these dunes in the satellite image versus the LiDAR image, and how it's good to, I'm trying to think of how you phrased it, but something like this is a good learning tool to understand what you can learn from LiDAR.
Yeah, and
That thought struck me.
yeah, that would be the approach I would take. I think the thing about LiDAR is that when you take away it is not to say I like to see as much forest cover as I can get, but when you take away basically the obstruction of like trees and buildings, you can see wrinkling of rock layers. You can see how far a canyon has cut its way. You can see the layers of rock exposed where a waterfall is. You can get a visual of, I use the word like expression of process. Like if this gets pushed, what's going to happen to it? You can see those consequences, and in an intuitive way. Like if you poured a bunch of sand out on a table, I like analog models, and then you just took your hand and you raked that sand up. You're going to rake up a wedge of material, and likewise, if you took that sand and you blew it across the table, you would sculpt forms. I mean, you're not going to make dunes as such, but you can see the material reacting to to some kind of an input. And I think LiDAR lets you see that. And it just lets you see what the land is made of, what mountains are made of. I was actually asked by a student, a really interesting guy. He was Haitian. He was a guy from Florida, played football at Virginia Tech, and he always had like like the most insightful questions. It was really like fascinating philosophical questions. Not the guy you would pick when the students come into the lecture hall. Like, this is not going to be the guy who is obviously thinking about this at the next level, but he always was. And he would have these really interesting questions about, like, what is this made of? And if you see this at the surface, what does this mean? Like, can you visually assume that what's up here goes down here? And one time he said, I look at that screen, I look at that picture, and I see what you see, but I don't see what you see. And I was like, okay,
okay,
I love that.
I understand completely. And actually, him saying that's sort of like, that was pretty formative, because I've tried to take the approach of being like, look, we all see these color patterns or shadow patterns, but this is what they mean. Like, this is the kind of movement that you should be, or the change, if you want to call it that you should be associating with it. And I latched onto LiDAR because it lets you do that. And when I like that student's question, or the I see what you see, but I don't really see it. It struck me as a tool for addressing that.
Totally. So 2 questions. Again, first one, just really simple. If people are listening to this and they want to find LiDAR for their area, from their home area to look at, where can they get it?
Right.
If anywhere?
Yeah.
And
So
how do you? Yeah.
You go to Google and you'll type in National Map Viewer, and you'll get a link that'll come up to a USGS website. It's just called the National Map. It may go straight to the viewer today. Its format has changed, but when you load up this viewer site, and I don't know what kind of tutorial they have, there's a little bar at the top, and it will just have like a layer list, and you can scroll down through it, and eventually you'll see one called Hillshade. And Hillshade is the one you want, and that'll show you a LiDAR overlay of basically the entire country.
No kidding.
That's crazy. I'm just doing it right now. It's that's very cool.
Like, how is this? I'm trying to. How do I phrase this? Who wanted this done? How do we have that much LiDAR imaging?
Question. As Jesse works on it, Jesse, you'll scroll down and it'll say 3-depth Hillshade, and it will have like the eye icon with a line through it. So
I'm seeing USGS National Map, imagery topo, imagery only, USGS shaded relief only, I'm guessing.
You gotta keep scrolling down. It should say 3-depth Hillshade, and it has it. The default will be it turned off, and you have to turn it back on.
Oh, I see. Okay,
and everything will turn gray.
Yeah, you got to go into the little layers panel thing.
Layers panel, okay.
Yeah. 3-depth.
Jesse,
elevation,
are you looking at it right now?
3-depth Hillshade. Yep, and it's got the eye turned off.
Yeah,
so
the Pennsylvania Valley and Ridge will look really cool.
That's so FEMA. Let's get back to my question then.
FEMA funded a fair amount of it. At least the higher resolution sets, because it's useful for studying big events.
And land use, right? I would think, you're going to put a development here. Is this a good idea or not? Right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah. I think ultimately, it's highly federally funded. And I think even when states collect sets, they're probably doing that off of federal funds that were allocated to the states. Now, I don't know that for sure, but in Virginia and West Virginia, just as an example, if you're pulling down tiles to process this on your own, and when I say pulling down tiles, I say you're downloading blocks of LiDAR data to process on your own. It's different from what Jesse's looking at, where he's just streaming it and viewing it. Typically they're tagged with, like, it'll be like FEMA 2016, such and such, so they're often the data is tagged with what induced its collection. But what I'm talking about
good news
specifically is like 1 meter resolution, which allows you to see incredible detail. Prior to that, those sets started coming out around 2016 heavily. Prior to that, you're about 10 meters or so, large scale, really cool. Landslides, karst, so sinkholes, cave openings, things like that. Not so good for that. The 1 meter resolution is truly the world game changer for structural geology, for landslides, for land use, for karst, cave
This is
studies.
incredible. I've messed around with this in Pennsylvania, but so Pennsylvania is obviously cool because I'm in the Valley and Ridge here and right near the Allegheny Front. But Chris, I went over to Michigan, and the good news is there is something interesting. It's the till cover is a little bit boring, but you can see the dunes. The sand dunes are unbelievable along the lakeshore, and then you can actually see a little tractor hole in Chris Bolhuis's property.
Yeah, okay.
Are you looking at dunes in Michigan right now?
Yeah, looking at dunes in Michigan. It's so cool.
Yeah, so like
it's amazing. You can see the road. The road's elevated up above the farmland, just slight elevation. It's incredible.
If you
when you say 1 meter resolution,
if you go to Effigy Mounds in Iowa, you can see the Native American Serpent Mound in Ohio. You can see that in
really. So when you say 1 meter resolution, is that the vertical relief that it's picking up, or is that the pixel?
Basically, it's making that elevation model basically from like an array of 1 meter cubes, I guess is how you would describe it.
Okay,
yeah.
Gotcha.
So
there's different resolutions of data set that are constantly coming out.
So you're like,
updated,
imagine kind of stacking those cubes up and I guess kind of interpolating the edges off of it. So with 1 meter, you can see tension cracks at the top of a landslide. Say the land is starting to slide. At the top end, you can actually see where the ground is cracking and pulling apart. You may not be that may be very subtle. If you're out in the forest, you can see it brilliantly with the 1 meter LiDAR. In North Carolina, we use half meter. So you can see everything.
You can see a lot.
Everything.
Wow, that's so. Yeah.
Hold on, Jess. Can I ask?
Yeah, absolutely. I'm too excited. This is very exciting stuff.
Yeah.
I love learning about this.
And we're doing a horrible job of moving this along, Jesse. But we need to do a little bit better.
It's because you got hooked on LiDAR. That's the problem.
I know. Well, the first time, that's what I wanted to talk to you about. The first time I really was hit with how important LiDAR can be was back in 2014 with the Oso mudslide in Washington. Do you remember that? And then just looking at using LiDAR to look at all of these other covered scarps. It was shocking. And LiDAR just lit it right up. So just amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. And that just exactly what you described is a big part of the North Carolina work, where are old failures in the landscape that could reactivate. They're particularly prone to that if they're modified in any way. And so documenting that and making that available as a way of informing land use development, very important, and you can't do it without LiDAR.
Oh, it's spectacular. It's so interesting.
Hey, Jesse, you going to join the conversation again here? You're done playing LiDAR?
In LiDAR space. I love
it happens to the don't let it sing its siren song to
it is so good.
I found my neighbor's retention pond that protects our whole neighborhood from flooding, and it's just amazing.
He's gone.
Stuff.
He's gone. He's lost.
He is.
He's lost.
He's down the rabbit hole. That's right.
So, so I know we're kind of running up against some time constraints here, Phil, but I want to. You taught me Appalachian geology, or at least you definitely helped me along to kind of get into it. What's your favorite part of Appalachian geology? Both your favorite story and your favorite place to go look at it for people who are interested.
That's a good question.
I have a follow up to this one as well.
Okay.
Now I think I would say the Valley and Ridge collectively is and that's it's hard to say as someone from the Piedmont who spent a lot of time in the Blue Ridge.
I'm sure.
But I enjoy the Valley and Ridge because you can look at it and you can see the thrust belt architecture. You can literally see miles thick sheets of sedimentary rock that have been stacked on top of each other and eroded. Right. So you can physically you can look at it on a map, you can see that structure, you can go up to an outcrop and see the tilted layers, and then drive a mile or two and see them tilt the other way, and that picture comes together. Expanding that a little bit, actually being around Blacksburg, around Virginia Tech, because you can go from the Blue Ridge thrust, which puts the metamorphic rock up on top of the sedimentary rock, drive across the valley and ridge, and then into West Virginia and the Appalachian Plateau where the layers aren't folded. You can do that in about an hour there. And you can see the really profound differences in what the rocks look like, what they do to the landscape. You can almost kind of sketch out in your mind how they are stacked and shingled on top of each other. So that's what sort of steered me in the direction I am today, just to be able to see that huge pattern in an accessible way, right? Like the Valley and Ridge in Tennessee is wider. In Pennsylvania, it's wider. It's quite brilliant in Pennsylvania, but just the ability to hit it all in an afternoon, like you can in Blacksburg. The story would probably come along with that. There's a couple of them, and strangely enough, though I don't work in it, they're like oil and gas drilling stories, and they actually relate to drilling in the valley and ridge and going down through the repeating rock sequences, and that causing a lot of confusion in the 40s and 50s and 60s before plate tectonics as we know it today was really a widely accepted, still call it a theory, paradigm, whatever. There was one in particular in West Virginia, right on the Virginia line, is the Ray Sponeogle well, and they were trying to drill down into the Cambrian quartzites. So what you would see on the east side of the Great Valley in Pennsylvania, like South Mountain as it comes up out of Maryland into Pennsylvania, Chilhowie quartzite. So they thought they could drill down 10,000 feet in this big anticline where the rock layers are bent upwards into an upward fold. They thought they would get down at 10,000 feet into this rock layer. They drilled 13,000 feet and stopped in the same layer that they started in. So,
oh my gosh.
And they pierced the same rock layer 3 times. And if they had actually drilled far enough to get to their goal layer, they would have hit it a 4th, because the fold pattern, the stacking pattern was so complex there. And a guy wrote a paper about it, and he was like, the way he worded it was basically, we ended up right where we started, and no one really knew what to think of that. But now it makes perfect sense. That's your expectation. Drilling into fold thrust belts around the world has proved it. And just the patterns of folding and stacking that you get in that kind of geology, they're very beautiful and interesting to me. And there are other stories like that in Appalachia where they drilled all the way through the folded sedimentary rocks in Virginia down to what we call the basement, down to the continental crust, down underneath it. And it was 17,000 feet below the current land surface. And doing that one, I think they went through one layer 4 times because it was stacked. So it's just to me, it's a magnificent way of thinking about it. When you go to the valley and ridge, you can see the top of that and kind of visualize that is stacked up under you. It's really cool.
That's amazing. My follow-up question, Phillip, we got to get this straight. Okay.
All right.
We've got it. I can't let you go without talking about this. Jesse always says Appalachia.
I knew it was coming.
Okay, come on, let's go. What's the story? Is it a regional thing? Like more southern is Appalachia, more northern is Appalachia?
Yeah. Generally speaking, and I've actually seen a map of that. Like, people have studied that. Yeah, they've studied that. I think like in Alabama, there's a pocket of Appalachia. I know a guy from northern Alabama that says that. I'm from South Carolina, so my parents are from Northeast Georgia. And everyone regionally here, Western North Carolina, Northeast Georgia, South Carolina, I've always heard Appalachia, like short kind of short vowels tend to be pretty popular in this.
Okay,
in
so
this
is the
region.
line is the line northern North Carolina then?
I don't know where
Is
it
that-
is. I don't know where it is actually. I've never.
We'll have to look up this
but I tell
study.
you what,
And,
you want to get some hot YouTube comments. You will get some people tell you that you need to, remove yourself from geology broadcasting because you said Appalachia, not Appalachia.
I know.
really?
People are like
Oh,
really,
goodness.
really
They,
tied
yeah,
to this.
they get
It's
fired up. But no, growing up in my circles, everybody always said Appalachia. And I don't know how that goes west of the mountains, like over in the plateau, in Kentucky, West Virginia. I really don't know. But certainly, the Northeast, it would be predominantly Appalachia there for sure.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, okay, we're gonna have to do a follow up and follow up and follow up and follow up and talking about however you want to pronounce this mountain range that we live in.
I have seen a map with like zones colored on it. It exists.
Okay, we'll have to.
Oh
we'll
wow!
have to look
I'm
that
gonna.
up
All right,
and
I'm
figure
interested.
that out.
Someone's done it.
Yeah.
Someone's done it.
Okay.
Someone's done it. All right.
All right. So Phillip, can you what's the origin story of your YouTube channel, or what do you really want to do with this? What's your goal?
Yeah. So the origin story.
Oh yeah, just lay out your plan.
My
Easy,
master
really easy,
plan, yeah.
quick.
The origin story is entertaining. It goes back to about 2013 or so.
Wow. Okay.
In the first floor of Daring Hall, Virginia Tech, I was teaching, had some big lectures at that time. And I was starting to put, some physical models in them just to show what we've been talking about. This idea of like pushing and stacking sequences of material. Had some undergrads working on it with me. We thought the visuals were kind of cool. And at that time, YouTube was a very different place. And it was like, oh, we'll put them on YouTube, And that was where the channel began. That's why it's called the GeoModels, because they were GeoModels. That's what the thumbnail image is from, which is a physical model, ironically made out of cornmeal. That's why it's yellow.
Oh, right. Okay.
Any frictional material will if it's not cohesive and sticky, it'll give you that form of columbic behavior that's good for modeling how the Earth's crust behaves, right? So it can be sand, it can be other media, and we did a lot of those because with for whatever reason with the cornmeal, with the apparatus we had, you could do interesting things with it just because of its frictional properties. So I was just using it almost as like a holding place for things I'd use in classes. Subsequent to that, I was writing blogs for AGU, for American Geophysical Union. I used it similarly as kind of a holding place for just references that I would write about. I've got a friend I grew up with that has done a lot with YouTube for his business, and probably just 2 years ago or something, he's saying, "Man, I know you're on YouTube. Like, you got to start doing something with it." And it's like, okay, I'll try it. And I made videos where I used the physical models and kind of talked about them and narrated them. And there was no traction of several hundred views to maybe a couple thousand views. And then last summer, someone asked a question in a comment on one. And I was like, man, I'm going to draw a picture in Microsoft Paint for this. And it was an immediate order of magnitude increase in traffic. So it was to maybe even 2 orders of magnitude. So it was from a few hundred to maybe 1,000 views. Immediately that one got, quickly like 80,000 views or something like that. And it's like, well, I'll draw another diagram in Paint. And that seemed to resonate. So yeah, actually, as you see it today, I
must say
enjoy,
has videos that are nearing 1 million views. I mean,
yeah,
many dozens of videos that have several hundreds of thousands of views.
It
now,
appears if you don't have it comes back to drawing the diagram in it. I obviously, I enjoy teaching. I enjoy the challenge of trying to, like, you've got this limited amount of time and kind of limited tools. Like, can you distill that into a usable block here that people will get something out of? So I have fun doing that, and I'm glad that people are seeing seeing geology maybe communicated in a different way, or that idea, like my student that, always had the good questions. It was like this idea that, what you're seeing on the surface really is sort of like, it's an expression of what's below there, kind of like just barely, poking out or whatever. Like that way of seeing mountains, like mountains are, particularly in Appalachia, mountains are where hard rock is sticking out at the surface. And that hard rock is kind of bent up into these structures. So that showing that idea to people, to me, is significant because you don't hear it everywhere. And then when you have an event like a Helene, like the earthquake we had in East Tennessee pretty recently, just being able to put context on that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Well,
like I use the channel for that reason as well, for sure.
And you're really good at it. I watch your channel, and I like watching you walk up the debris flow from Helene on the mountainside. And just the things, I was struck by what I've always felt about geology is we look at the world through a different lens. And, and people can't think about words they don't know. You can't think about thoughts that never would occur to you. And you were pointing out little things, walking up that draw it was just, I was struck by that again. It was really, really good. It was really, really cool. So I don't know.
Good.
I love it.
Well, no, that was what I was hoping to do with it. And I think, as you just said, like, it goes back to, like, I see what you see, but I don't see it. It's that ability to recognize relevant details that may not be in your language that you use day to day. And I'm trying to introduce that language as I'm able.
The one thing I really appreciate about your videos, and I think the response is telling and is similar to a response similar to something Chris and I have picked up on, I think, is that you go in, you have no fear of going deep and taking people deep, and you have great talent for, I'm serious, like you have great talent for taking people from zero, from literally like starting with zero geology knowledge and taking them to a really deep story of the Middlesboro impact crater and the Cumberland Gap. Like, I mean, it's unbelievable. That's a great talent. And I think what Chris and I've always been really impressed by people is they have an appetite for it. Like, there's a really deep appetite for being in the weeds in this subject matter. And I think it's represented by, the people who, how many views your channel gets, because it's great, because it's weeds, it's deep knowledge. You've got a PhD.
I have to say, I appreciate a lot about LiDAR. I'm very, you have made me feel very good by saying all of that, for sure.
Well, because it's great, because this is effectively, I mean, your channel is if you don't just talk about Appalachia, but you're getting almost like a graduate level class in Appalachian geology. Just by watching your channel. Like, I honestly believe that. I think that's true. And
it's an interesting, and I can see that. I think what I try to do with it is I try to take it back to like basic physical relationships. You know what I mean? And from that foundation, that's where you can go out in the weeds, but you always have a way back to something familiar. And I guess that's how I structure it in my mind. But yeah, when I think back on it, I did not start to hear about thinking about that idea of like structural architecture and what you see at the surface. I didn't start hearing about that till grad school.
So it's true. And for me, it's, I'm a geology professor. I have a deep knowledge of geology. There's a lot of geology online content that I don't consume because I don't learn. It's not for me. Your channel, I learn from a lot, and I really like. Well, I consider myself an active consumer of your channel. I appreciate that.
I do, and I'm trying to be sure there's something in it for somebody in your capacity, as well as somebody that just kind of walked in and is like, man, like, why is that mountain there? So
and I think you do that really well. You bridge that divide really well. I think.
Nice.
So, anyway,
nice. No, that's
all right. Well, Phillip, now we can finally get to our last question.
Last question. I'm ready. I've got an answer. So go ahead and ask.
Okay. You do? All right. So what's been your best day as a geoscientist?
It will cap this interview off with probably more strangeness and yet another direction. It was in Jamaica of all places. So I wound up. I had always been interested in big. I like big islands because of what they represent. I mean, say Jamaica's a small island, yeah, but it's got a few mountain ranges, pretty good sized rivers. Like it's a large enough landmass. Islands are cool for what they represent tectonically in many cases. I ended up going to Jamaica actually looking to scout whitewater paddling. It has some really interesting rivers. And when I was doing that, it was when I was in graduate school. Some of what I saw there geologically was like, oh, it's really unexpected. Actually, it probably took me back to that first field trip from Furman where I went to this place and saw it in a new way or whatever. And so I was telling Jim Spatil, my old advisor, about it, and he wound up with a grad student years later that had funding, or like, why don't you do an exhumation study? So like a study of how quickly rock is basically being squeezed up out of the ground in Jamaica, because that's what the island of Jamaica is. It's kind of a pinch in the crust along a big fault, and quite literally the crust is being sort of squeezed up to produce the island. And so we went down there. Jim didn't go, so I was sent as sort of a temporary advisor or whatever. And plus I'd just been around the area and kind of knew where we were going to get our samples. And one day we got up at like 2 a.m. and hiked to the top of Blue Mountain Peaks, like the highest mountain on Jamaica, sampled rock samples from the top of it, and basically walked our way down and sampled over a mile of topographic relief. It was like a huge, ridiculous long day, like backpacks full of rocks. And then we like rode in the back of this pickup back to where we were staying on the side of the mountain. It was just kind of it is the only exhumation rock uplift rate study I think done in the Blue Mountains of Jamaica. And it was just cool. Like
very cool.
The setting, the kind of rocks you see there, because I always think about Caribbean islands like I'm going to see limestone or like an uplifted coral reef, and they're beautiful granites and granodiorites. They look like rocks that you would see in the Sierras in California. I don't know, like it's something about the nature of those rocks in that place, and just like the culture around you, and pulling this huge day, sampling these things up. It was a cool paper. The guy's name is Joe Cochran, did his PhD with Jim. Did a great paper about it. It was just like an awesome Jamaica of all places, It was just like, but it was to circle it all back and like pull it all together. That it's probably a video I'll do at some point. But just like what why is there an island there? And you can distill that down pretty quickly, and you can talk about why it has huge earthquakes, and you can also think about why, if you go to the mountains there, you might see something that is reminiscent almost of other places, but it actually has a really logical explanation just in movement, And yeah, it was there was a lot of good days on that trip, but I think that one in particular was like that was a high point.
Yeah, that's an exceptional one. Well, all right, we're way over time. Philip, thanks so much for this. Has been a real pleasure talking to you. I always enjoy talking to you even more than watching your video.
Well, I'm glad. We'll try to keep video traffic going. But no, I would enjoy a follow. I mean, if you're in the Pennsylvania Valley and Ridge, man, I don't know. That needs a video itself, so maybe we
absolutely. Well, we've been talking for a long time about doing something on the Appalachians, and it's just something huge it's almost too big to kind of sink our teeth into at the moment for a series like or an audiobook on the app or whatever.
Sure.
But we should get together and brainstorm. I think we could come up with something really cool to do.
We should do it
collaboratively about it. That'd be super fun. And if it has field trips and maybe a little trout fishing. Then
there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with that.
I think that's pretty good.
That's right.
That's a pretty good way to spend time. All right, cool. Well, thanks so much, Phil. Appreciate it, and we'll talk again soon.
All right, great.
Thanks, Philip.
All right. Hey, that's a wrap. You can follow us on all social medias. We're at Plant Geocast. Download our CampGeo mobile app. First link in your show notes. You can get a continuous mind on the CampGeo mobile app. Just listening to all of our content we have there, visual podcast series. You can leave us a like, review, comment, subscribe, follow us on YouTube or Spotify, and shoot us an email. We have a contact us link on our website, plantgeocast.com.
Cheers.
Peace.